So, hello Ute. It is
Hello,
really,
hi.
really nice today and here. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation and giving me some of your time today to interview you. And to start with it, I'm really envying you because now we're switching places. Germany, sitting in Stuttgart, where you almost coming from. And now, where are you, Ute? Can you start by that, please?
Yes, so I am actually in Egypt, Dahab. So I'm on Sinai and I'm actually looking, I don't know if you can see that, into that direction. So my view is the Red Sea. Oh, did I just, that was by mistake that I switched off my video. Yeah, so I'm in front of the Red Sea. Today is a beautiful day. And I just came back to Dahab yesterday from Ethiopia, actually. And this is kind of my triangle for the last few years that I moved between Germany, Ethiopia, and Egypt. And in Egypt, it's usually Dahab.
Hey. So it's really, really interesting because of the last couple of interviews, I've been interviewing Egyptians in Germany, like different people, singles, lady coming first, her husband second, or a husband bringing his wife and children. Today, it's really interesting to see the other perspective. First, like, tell us maybe more. You're German originally. So we're close to Stuttgart. We know each other through also a very interesting coincidence in Siwa.
That's true.
Egyptian Oasis. We were together in one workshop there. And as far as I understand, you have been an expat for so many times in your lifetime. So could you maybe share with us how was your expat experience so far?
Yeah. Actually, I don't really know if I would consider myself be an expat. But I move a lot. I travel a lot, and I would say at least here in Dahab, I feel it's definitely my second home. It became my second home. So it started about 8 years ago. So I used to always like traveling, and then so my brother used to live in Egypt, in Cairo, and then also through university I got to know a lot of Egyptians. And I guess the first time I came, where I just needed to have a break from rough German winter. So I tend to get depressed in German winters. So that's why at one point I have to move. And yeah, people have been telling me about Dahab being a very relaxed place and a nice place to just calm down. And this is how I came 8 years ago. And yeah, ever came back, like I think it's about 10 times, maybe even more now. And for the last 2 years, so with Corona crashing in and people getting more used to online work, it really also became that kind of place that I do research and I work for university. So whenever there is breaks in university or whenever I have time only for reading and writing, I would come to Dahab and stay here and basically yeah, work with my laptop and live here.
Okay. And you wouldn't call yourself an expat, you have said. Could you explain us more why? Is it because of the duration of being there, or is it because the term itself? Or how is your insight about it?
I think, yeah, I think there's some difficulties with expat in general with the term. I mean, I'm not into it in depth, but yeah, I think there is some global north, global south inequalities concerning the term. So when do you call someone an expat and when do you call someone a migrant? I guess traditionally it's reasons to move, and traditionally it was also basically people coming from the global north were called expats, coming as professionals to the global south, and then migrants more the other way around. I guess now it's getting a bit more mixed. And I think because I I can't say I have moved here completely. I think that is also kind of why I would maybe even not consider me a migrant nor an expat, but more like a person who is in between, like maybe a translocal. So yeah, I live here and there. I think that's how I would tell. And so within the last 2 years, probably the majority of the time I did spend here. But still being also in Germany and in Ethiopia. So it's also a bit difficult to say when I would consider this being also a home, like because I came 8 years ago, then first it was holiday, then it became a familiar place. Now I have a social network here, I have also life here. So it's the phase of transition, I guess, is maybe a bit more different than for many expats where you decide to move and you build up a life in another place, which was not really my case. Yeah.
I totally understand, and thank you for bringing up this very important point in my perspective, which is the term itself. Like expats, how it was used over the last couple of years, or in the history, let's say, of determining which term is to be used, expat or immigrant. And thank you for bringing up that. And that's why I started the expats network with immigrants who come from Egypt or from the Africa now to Germany. And let's see how this develops. And now you're moving to the south. So tell us, as an expat, a typical expat, more about your experience in the global south. Like, first of all, I would like to start with a very important question that I always ask. What would have been an important information that would have facilitated maybe your move abroad, or like you're not residing in either place, but what would have been an important piece of information that would have saved you some trouble, saved you some challenges in a way or another?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is connecting to those who are already there. And I would even say both, I mean, more important, the ones who really come from this place or speak the language, because I can really see here that there are 2 layers. So this is a place where a lot of foreigners live, particularly from Europe. And if you don't know people, if you don't speak Arabic yourself, if you don't know people who speak Arabic, and if you're not like closely related, you have a very different perspective. There are so many things that you don't see because you can't see it with your eyes, or you only see it with your eyes when someone told you. I can make an example. Yeah, not the nicest one, I would say, but I can make an example. So as you know, there was the COP27 a few months ago, like the climate conference very close to here in Sharm el-Sheikh. And I mean, probably you know, but I think what many people either here or then also in the Western countries didn't know is that there were many arrestings. Like it was supposed to be cleaned out, the area, Sinai, but also in Cairo. And police presence was extremely high, also here in Dahab. But as I just said before, you didn't see it. As a foreigner, once I knew, I saw it, because people like these kind of policemen and security people, they are dressed normally. You can't recognize them in the first place. And they were not targeting foreigners, white people. So, but a lot of Egyptians or other Arab there was a lot of control. Some got arrested. So this was just one example where I realized, I love being here, and it's such a wonderful place, but also my image as a non-local is a very different one. So I think, it is very important to have people who are really can give you such kind of perspectives, and also this, of course, in a positive way. There are so many cultural traditions that I mean, now I'm sitting in the beachfront, which is basically where all the foreigners are. But then if you go a little bit more into the town, or you have someone where you can join to people's homes, you really find a very different way of life. And I think that is interesting here, that it is a mix. But yeah, so what I would tell someone who is moving, try to be clear that you do have an outsider's perspective and that there are many different perspectives. And I think this is probably true for everywhere in the world. And try to open up yourself, or try to find a way how you can gain these different perspectives. I think that would be probably the most important one.
Okay, I truly appreciate this point because yeah, living in Germany as well, I can relate to your experience. And when I first arrived here, I was only speaking English, and I was in a very international society or part of the community, I would say. And starting to speak the language facilitated more my eyesight or my experience in the community. And the more I get in touch with the locals, the more I understand more of the system, the community, and everything that I used to say as I would say, in my opinion, it was shallow. So I didn't really have this deep understanding or real experience. And the more I get more in touch with the locals, the more I learn the language, the more I can get more experience of everything going around me. So thank you for bringing this point. And thank you also for, at the beginning, mentioning this very interesting term, translocal. Yeah. If you get the time or interest, can maybe elaborate more about this term. And one good question is now, what are the challenges, like the biggest challenges so far that you would like maybe to mention for somebody to take care or to consider before moving to be translocal, or to be living in this virtual land that we are all living as expats or people roaming several countries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so concerning the first one, yeah, I actually would really like to recommend you to speak to a good friend and a colleague, Shahareen. Maybe you will have the chance to speak to her. So yeah, it's also a scientific term. So there is research on translocality. So yeah, really, I'm not an expert on this, but I know that kind of before it was more discussed, yeah, about migrants or expats, and it was assumed that, yeah, you moved from one place to another one. And now also science has acknowledged that there is people who always live kind of in this in between. So it's a kind of a translocal life, because I don't live only in this locality or in this locality, but I live in this translocal space. Yeah, which I think also from a scientific perspective, coming from the field of urbanism, it's important to look into that. Yeah, so I learned it through my colleague these terms, but I can really very much relate to it, because it seems like this is how I have started to live my life, and I feel home in both places. I have social networks in both places, and maybe we're going to that one a bit more later, but yeah, it comes also with its difficulties about identity. Where do I belong to? All these kind of questions that appear. And then tell me again, the second one was challenges?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it relates again a little bit to this question of, yeah, being a foreigner. So once you're not a tourist anymore, but you identify yourself with being, I don't know, some sort of a local, you kind of want to live as a local. But then first of all, I mean, it starts from appearance and language, that I am not identified as a local, and I'm also not really a local. So I think that remains to be a challenge. How am I local without being a local? I think
Yes.
so, and that is on an emotional level, but then also very practically, you know, I do get different prices, I don't know, the network is a different one. So yeah, how much do you want to, I don't know if integration is the right term, I don't really think so, but how much do you localize, or how much can you localize yourself in a new place? Yeah, or how do I feel as a local that is not coming from here? I think that is something that yeah, can be challenging. And I think this is also why I would, jumping back to the first discussion, as much as I think it is important to gain the perspective of insiders, as much it can also help to have others who have done the same. I guess maybe you can also relate to that,
Yeah.
You find people that having maybe culturally the same background, and you can share these sorts of experiences with each other.
I can totally relate to your experience. And living in Germany almost for like the last 9 years, and being, as you say, as you have taught me today, the term translocal, I have always needed my support system, which I left behind somehow in Egypt. My family and friends who were raised with me, were raised with me almost in the same social structure, social background, cultural background, sometimes religious background. But this understanding, and through the years, it has helped me really a lot. Moving from one social circle to another, but always having this connection to my background or to my roots, and always having fellow Egyptians or fellow Arabs, or it gave me somehow a sense of like belonging, kind of like transitional community phase, or also like it helped me sometimes in my phases of homesickness. And I've been living in Germany since 9 years, but I cannot really say that I've been living durch or like totally in Germany for 9 years. There were times when I'm always living like in the sub bubble of being in an Egyptian community or Arab community, not totally in the community, in the German community. And sometimes I was like you, I cannot live fully in Germany nor fully in Egypt, so I'm also like roaming in this room in between. So I can totally relate to your experience, and it can get really challenging without getting some locals. Like in Germany, there will be so much happening, and if I don't really get a German who's explaining to me something, then I'm totally out of the room sometimes. Yeah, so I can totally understand this in between room. And yeah, I really love your hairstyle today. So that's the first time I saw your new style today, coming back from Ethiopia. So how was it there? I've never been there, and we're accustomed to people who move now due to the economic situation to the global north. So there's a huge flow coming now from the southern lands, unfortunately, or fortunately. Sometimes it's for study background, so it's nice. Sometimes it's brain drain, so it's not very nice. So let's see. And now you are giving the other perspective, the other way around, being an academic. And as you mentioned in between, we relate somehow to this background of urbanism. So on a personal level, maybe you share it on an academic level, whatever you feel free to share. How is it like in Ethiopia, and how is your perspective down there?
Yeah, I actually, just before you started speaking, I also thought like today is really the day where it becomes very obvious. I still feel very, very weird with my hair, I must say, especially now looking to myself in this screen. There is so much face, more than usual. So yeah, I got my hair done in Ethiopia, and I'm actually glad I'm not in Germany. I don't know if I would be able to hold it there. So it's a thing in Ethiopia, I mean, of course, and then particularly for holidays. So I actually decided to give it a trial. And yeah, of course, I'm not being local now. But yeah, it was a very nice experience, particularly about entering worlds, right? So now I'm coming from a very small example, but I went to this hair beauty place where I never went before, of course, because there was no reason for me in Ethiopia to go to such a place. But then this place was full of all these women getting their hair done. It was like everybody was laughing, and then of course people were laughing about my weird hair. And yeah, it was a really nice experience to, enter such a normal thing. I think that is in general what I really enjoy, going to other places rather than being a tourist. When you go to a hairdresser, it's not a tourist event, it's like a very, very local thing. So you do get a different perspective. So that's just the story about my hair. So then Ethiopia, how is it? Yeah, I really enjoy being there. I appreciate and I learn a lot each time. So I've been going to Ethiopia also already for the last 4 years. So primarily we did go with students. So we had some students exchange, some joint summer schools, working in the field of urbanism. Also really trying to learn from the local grounds and then trying to scale it up to all the bigger questions that we have in urban development, like what is a city? What is a city that is a non-European city? What is a city where rapid urbanization is basically forming space? So yeah, it has changed many perspectives. So the first one is about my background. I'm an architect and urban planner. And the whole idea of what planning is and what planning should be, has been questioned now, because what we learned is not only not applicable, but also not right to do in an African or in an Ethiopian context. And then academically, that makes it very interesting because we have to think anew. So I think this is why, it really kept me there, like, because we're challenged, and that makes it also a task. And I started to do research. I'm doing my PhD now. And so right now my PhD is on human-nature relationships. So yeah, very briefly explained, is that in the global north, or let's say in Germany, we're right now trying hard to bring back, nature in its broadest sense to the cities, whereas modernism was able to really separate all ideas of nature and societies. Also, romanticizing nature as something external to the city, whereas, first of all, traditionally African societies didn't make such kind of a distinct break between nature and society. And then, so my research is a still kind of rural area where people just are based on nature, like the whole life is completely intertwined. So I guess the background of this research is the question of how could a city look like where this idea and these practices of people's lives based on nature, interacting with nature, where it's just an entity. How could this look like in a future city? So I'm trying to understand, and so I'm just coming back yesterday, as I said, from field work. And what I really learned is this cultural dimension. Like our idea would still be very much based on this idea of natural resources, or what can nature give us, like it's a production of CO2 and water and all these kind of things. And of course, it's on the one hand, it's very pragmatic how people live, but then there is a very cultural and spiritual idea of what nature is. And this really impressed me. And I also thought we can learn a lot from that. So people would, for example, say, we sit under a tree because a tree symbolizes peace and truth. So we can only make the right decision if we do sit under a tree. And there isn't many of these kind of examples. So I do believe that yeah, we can really learn a lot. And very personally speaking, I do learn each time, and I get new insights. And I'm very grateful that I'm able to do this.
And I really appreciate the insight that you gave me personally, also as an African and or a Middle Eastern, because when I associate myself to being an African, I'm not really accepted by my fellow Africans because maybe I don't really look like the stereotype. So thank you so much. I wish I could visit Ethiopia sometime soon. I didn't really quite if you've already mentioned why did you start going to Ethiopia? Like about Dahab, it was a vacation that somehow developed. What about Ethiopia?
It was, so I was working at ADK Stuttgart, so the Arts Academy in Stuttgart. It was through teaching actually. So my professor and the professor here there in Ethiopia started a collaboration, and we came with students. So it was actually through the institution, through academics, and yeah, moved to still academic, but also personal interest. So I'm now doing my PhD there. And of course, I have established also through the last years some sort of social network and also academic network. So I would actually also say, also as a, so here, maybe we can move to that a bit more later, that I'm not here, I work here, but I'm not here to work in Dahab. Whereas in Ethiopia, I'm there to work. So doing my research, and then the academic network is again very important. So not to fall into some sort of traps. So each time I go there, I discuss my research with colleagues, and yeah, you know, there are these things again that you, as a foreigner, you might not understand completely, or there are so many layers behind it. So for example, speaking about culture, it has been used by others to somehow politicize or to bring forward some ideological ideas. So yeah, so you have to have people that, you know, give you the full perspective, that even though you're reading or you're speaking to someone, that someone kind of is able to, yeah, to counterbalance. And the same is true on a social or personal network in Ethiopia, maybe even more than in Egypt, that you have someone who is telling you what is going on a daily basis. So sometimes there are protests or these kind of things that I don't get from the news and I don't get from anywhere. So I rely very much on people. Like I get phone calls telling me today you should do this or that to have a good experience because there is a cultural event that I didn't know of, or because there are some demonstrations and they tell me they'll go in this area or that area, which yeah, I would never be able to do without this kind of network.
Okay. Oh, that's a very good point that we always had in the interviews. It was like the social network. I had a lot of challenges coming to Germany, and I realized the transitions or like the roles that you have already mentioned now, like coming to Germany on several trips, or like student cooperation, or like pilot projects, or to Europe in general. When I started to travel from Egypt, it was a very different experience because I had this small groups where I was moving through, and then through my master's degree, which was an international master's degree, I had this like small community that I had a sense of belonging to. And then moving outside this bubble to like the German community, starting to work, being in competition sometimes with my peer colleagues who are sometimes international, sometimes German. I felt like being thrown out into the sea and having to realize my ways or find my ways myself sometimes. And then I started to weave these social networks. How do I find my leads, how to find everything. And then that was a very important point that you mentioned, that your social network in Ethiopia has a different role because you're there as an academic working in the field of urbanism. And then in Dahab, you are there on your free will. You're either writing for your thesis, for your doctor arbeit, or you're doing something for your holidays or something. But still, you're taking some long time, which is called like an immigrant, expat, or translocal. So how is your social network strategy to feel like you are getting some leads and making sure that you're safe? And I have to admit, in Germany, the announcement level is way higher, and then I get notifications in every way possible. But in the global south, it's more people. People. I have totally to admit also, like the maps, everything, it's always the people. You have to stop in the street, ask them how to get there, go there. Sometimes Google isn't really the biggest help. So how's that for you so far?
Yeah, actually, let's also after speak a little bit about this working somewhere without going there to work. I think it's also interesting in getting a thing, as a lot of people start to work remotely. But first, how is my social network strategy? That's a good question, because I never felt it's a strategy, but probably, unconsciously. I mean, it's always a mixture of, you have needs and coincidences. So I would say, it's definitely based on these two levels that you can't really say that they are completely separated, but I do have local friends coming from Western countries, and I do have local friends coming from the Arab world. So, and on both ends, as you just were saying, like you need these sorts of notifications, because, for example, for some kind of formalities, it's really, really good to have foreigners that have come here, like when to renew visa. I don't know how to get housing. Also like what were experiences from others, and then I would say the Arab speaking friends, or friends that either come from here or from other Arab countries. There it's much more about either politics or getting along. Yeah, the small things, like where do you buy certain things that you don't need as a tourist. I think that is also something. So yeah, I have to say that I'm living in a binational relationship. So my partner is Arab, so that makes many things more easy. Some things more complicated, but many things living here more easy. And I now start to learn the language, because I can also see that not only understanding the language, but also I only started recently, but there are so many layers to language also, that you start to understand the culture. So you start to understand how people live here. Maybe. Yeah, and then I think it's like everywhere. It's a mixture of. So building up the social network is a mixture of a lot of coincidences. I have some interests. I go climbing, I do yoga, I go swimming. I like to see movies, and wherever I go, I meet people, and then not all of them become my friends, but it's also based on, maybe you like each other, you found something interesting in each other. And then I know that it is also for those who live here permanently, maybe it's even more difficult. I don't live here permanently, but I think that is another kind of difficult aspect when you live this kind of life, that some of the people also change all the time. So that is also a challenging aspect of it, that sometimes it's also hard to build up this kind of very stable relationships. Yeah.
I totally agree to this point. Like when I was raised and grew up in Egypt, for the first, let's say, 21st years of life, I didn't face this problem that every year somehow someone of my friends is leaving or parting. And as far as I started moving to Germany, starting off by my dorm life, every other week there's somebody coming, or maybe he didn't like the dorm and he's moving out, or every semester somebody's coming, and this attachment, or somebody's moving to a different city. The movement in out is so fast sometimes that I had to adapt to it. And the fact also that I was open so much traveling, I didn't really feel like I can set so much expectations for my friends that they're always there spontaneously as those who used to live with me in the same city every day. So you can call each other and leave because, yeah, everyone somehow in a different city suddenly, and myself as well. So it's really hard. So it's a very interesting point that you raised that I'm going, it's not the same. And also, like, yeah, the time as an aspect is also very challenging in that sense. Let's come
And I
back
have
to this.
another I have another aspect also. I think maybe that's also in general a difference between cultures or places, and also this is a very small place or comparatively small place. Neighborhoods, you know, here are neighborhoods are very important. So if I look into my neighborhood in Stuttgart, I don't even know the people whom are living in the same house. It's a very big complex. I moved there about a year ago. I think I know one person.
Well,
And here I come and you know I know every person around in the supermarket. Like people where some of them I don't even exactly know where they live, but I know they're my neighbors. So this sort of meeting on an everyday level also is a different kind of social networks. Like many of them are not my friends, but they are around, and when there is something going on, you share information, or you share, I don't know, small things, help each other, support each other, make some jokes on the street.
yeah,
So I think yeah, that's also what I appreciate very much living here. That yeah, you have a lot of contacts that are not based on friendship, not based on work or anything on purpose, but it's just because they're your neighbors. Yeah.
yeah. It sounds very very serene or peaceful. I would say, yeah, that's emotional now, but yeah, let's keep it neutral. Um, so now back to the point. Yeah, I wanted to say something about this point first. Like, yes, but I'm not very sure. I think it is something also regarding the scale. Like, it's about Dahab for sure because it's a small city, and I wanted to ask you your opinion because I think Dahab is also like this because it's now becoming more of an expat city in a way or another. Like I lived there for a couple of weeks at least, and then I remarked that there is a lot of Europeans, as you said. There is a big Russian community, a very big Russian and German community, and Europeans in general. And I think that also made the community more open to foreigners, I would say. But I'm not really sure how much do you get in touch with the locals. As you mentioned, it's neighborhood classified. Now I'm going into details, but maybe you can mention it at this point where you said maybe you can share with us more about being there for work remotely, but not really for work.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe a few sentences about the neighborhood thing. It's true, like so it's again this mixture of bubbles in some ways. Like for example, the Russian community is very strong, but I would say we, as I don't know, other Europeans, yeah, we don't really mix too much. So yeah, so I think there are separate bubbles, but then in the neighborhoods it does get mixed, and then the locals is also hard to define here, apart from those who are not from the Arab region, I would say. So there are so the locals here are Bedouins. So the Bedouin neighborhoods, I think you have to be for quite a while here once you start to get more into that. You have to speak the language, and then you only interact with some. But for these kind of pragmatic purposes, what I was speaking about, you also do. Like you wouldn't mix too much socially, but yeah, pragmatic reasons, I don't know, food or I don't know, a hammer. You do mix. And then there is also so Bedouins say the Egyptians, so Bedouins don't really consider themselves being Egyptian. So then there is a lot of people from Cairo who have moved here, and I think probably it's also a certain kind of people that really, yeah, I would say European and Egyptians that are not coming here from Sinai originally mix in on everyday base, but also friendships socially. So it's very much mixed. So yeah, then the question about yeah, not working here, but still working here. Like I never came for work, which is also not 100% true, because it is a place where I'm able to work very well. So I was maybe even surprised myself in the beginning that yeah, you have a lot of people who are here for holiday and they don't have to do anything. And yeah, some days it's a bit challenging that because nobody is telling me when to sit in front of my computer. I don't have a fixed schedule. So you have to find your own routine. And it has become, I think Corona really made Dahab this kind of remote working place. So I came after the first lockdown, so just after the first lockdown winter in Germany, and I came here and I saw it was full of Europeans. Like all Europeans did yeah, work from here. So yeah, I think it's a new level that we are still exploring. Like you know, before here, internet was not really important. Now, like some people are really, because sometimes it's still not stable, and then everybody tries to share with each other where is the best place to get a reliable internet, and this kind of questions. And I'm also not 100% sure if I should picture my perfect life. I mean, I guess I'm very close. At the same time, I do see how important sometimes it also is to sit with colleagues in the same space, because the virtual space is not the same. And that there is some sort of, yeah, moving. I think this is where we maybe back to the translocality, moving with your mind from now working in my computer, being somewhere in Ethiopia with my research, but also in Germany with my research. And then I go for lunch and I'm in Egypt, having a different conversation, not about work, because this is not my workplace. So if I was in Germany and I'm going for lunch with my colleagues, of course, somehow yeah, conversations go around, or it's still present. So yeah, I think there are some cuts that one has to be aware of, that this is then reality, and see, yeah, how much of it you appreciate. So I do appreciate it, but how much you might also miss in between. So for example, I started doing also with some colleagues coffee break virtual meetings, which yeah is maybe a bit weird, and of course I don't want to sit in front of my computer all day while having, sorry to show you again, having this one.
Oh,
but at the same
me,
but at the same time, yeah, these kind of informal things otherwise really get lost. So I think working remotely, we're still learning. I think we're still learning. And then, yeah, maybe to show you the other thing, like this is the space that I'm sitting in right now. So I'm obviously not sitting in an office. So my office every day might be a different one that I choose. And yeah, this is also something of routine that I start to know, for what kind of work do I need what kind of space. So do I want to work from, like now I'm renting an apartment right now, I'm still so I'm going to rent an apartment, but I'm still in a hostel right now. And yeah, when do I want to sit in front of in a cafe? When do I need complete silence? If I have an apartment, do I want to stay home all day? like all these kind of questions that I didn't have in Germany, where it was obvious that in the morning I leave my house and then I go to work, and after that I go home. So yeah, I think there are some very nice aspects about working remotely, but also, yeah, I had to learn some things, and I'm still trying to find my own way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Uta, especially addressing this point, remote work, because as you mentioned, it's really growing these days. In the last project working here in Germany, I was designing and developing a work campus, or like an office building campus in the southern area of Stuttgart for real estate bank here. And it was very interesting how much changes Corona had brought to our development, and how many spaces that we had to reduce because people were like more like into working more remotely, and the home office has saved a lot of spaces, saved a lot of energy, and saved a lot. But still, like the human interaction, as you mentioned, also it's very important. Like I cannot really imagine my whole life now sitting at home, maybe in front of the sea, like you do now. I wouldn't mind it at all, but yeah, somewhere in between is definitely needed. But yeah, I have two important questions. So let's start with the first one. Definitely coming from Germany and the social state and having the health insurance, the infrastructure, the different standard of the work places and everything, you are used to something else. Definitely, I know how open to the world you are, how many experience you have in life traveling between different places. It's also part of your work and part of your personality. Uh, but let's not wear the pink glasses and speak about Dahab as the perfect place for work. How challenging could that be? I was recently in Nueva or Dahab, like it's also like a place 1 hour northern of Nueva. I had an interview here in Germany. It was one of the biggest research institutes, and I had had to drive 1 hour away to the nearest 5 stars hotel to get some stable internet to finish my interview. I also had some allergic reaction from diving in the sea, and I was near the corals, and I had this instant need for going to the hospital, and it was not very easy. Even though I went to the public hospital, it was super. They saved my life really with an injection on the spot. So it's awesome. But a lot of people in the global north, I would say, they would be super afraid of the relatively underestimated or overestimated, as would you explain that, infrastructure in the global south. How is your reflection on that? How have you been challenged? What is the best or worst situations that you would like to share?
So I guess, yeah, first I have to say, being here, I'm still privileged, you know. So the first thing is that is also a challenging thing, to see that, you know, I do have a health insurance. Like worst case, whatever, I could fly to Germany. It actually happened to me. It happened to me when the war started in Ethiopia. It became really a big thing. I mean, the war has been there for a year, but then there was last year, Addis Ababa was approached, and then they told all foreigners to leave, and we had to leave from one day to another, where you really see that, you know, I was told to leave, and my colleagues and my friends, they had no option. Like, if now the war is coming closer, I'm the one who goes, and others stay. And I think this is, when you do it like I am doing, kind of the other way around, the movement, yeah, you're shown on a daily basis that you're privileged, yeah, which is difficult. So, and then I ask myself these questions also, like how much, like I'm in general not I don't know how to say. So I keep the kind of security. So I keep some sort of security, and at the same time, maybe that's why, or in general, I'm not a person that gets scared easily. But sometimes I ask myself these questions. I know people here who have completely resigned from the German system, trusting that even something would happen to them here. They start to, I don't know, social networks again is a big thing that that people base their trust on. And I think, yeah, so infrastructure, I mean, right now that's internet, but that's kind of not I don't know, not a basic necessity. And the way I work, it's also not. It might be annoying if the day I have a meeting, I don't have internet, but for me, it's also not very a very big thing. And then other infrastructure, sometimes we have electricity cutouts, sometimes there's no water. Yeah, I got used to it, I must say. I don't really because it's also never long. I think maybe that's one of the things. It's only short. And then I sometimes think of, like, if I'd move here and completely have a base here, I think some things would change. For example, maybe I would get a solar panel, maybe I would find my own ways of working around infrastructure. And yeah, I think the question with hospitals, because I sometimes think of it, it never happened to me that I had anything. And yeah, for example, I was wondering, there is a lot of women that get babies, European ones, and some to decide to get them here, and others decide to go home to their home countries. And I think that, for example, is a very interesting question. Do you want to go back to where things are going as you expect them to be, or are you saying, now I live here and women here are also giving birth? I haven't been put in that situation, but I think there are some very questions about what we in Germany maybe don't really think about anymore. But then when you live this kind of translocal life, you always wonder, and I think this is when we can move to the question of identity. You always wonder, like, should I really localize in one space and then accept it as it is and try to fully live it, or are you still going to pick different things from the different localities? Yeah,
I totally agree. And I totally live the extremes as well, like going to the most popular, simple places in Cairo, where I originally come from, coming from a middle place, not very extreme on a social level, or also coming to the global north and living in Germany with the unendless opportunities of insurance system, like insurance for everything, insurance for your health, for your rights, for your private life, for everything, really. Like that's one of the basic things you get to know if you would like to move to Germany, which we have discussed. And thank you also for remembering to mention the language barrier, because here in the last interviews with Egyptians moving to Germany, they have definitely explained how hard that was to integrate or not to integrate. Let's not use this term. To localize without learning the German language, so it makes a huge difference. And getting to know the system and everything. And the thing that we have never settled on 100% is what you mentioned, the belongingness, or like this identity question, like where do we belong? And I have always discussed it with my friends, and somehow it gives me an emotional support knowing that I'm not alone. There are so many people, they can relate to me and I can relate to them, because when I go back to my friends who were raised with me in the first 20 years of my life, and I complain about something in Germany, or I'm amazed, or I have this feeling that I don't totally belong, they cannot really 100% grasp what I'm saying. Neither can sometimes here locals in Germany who have also lived as expats somewhere else. So I lie in this middle region where I cannot really locate myself on the border, on a virtual borderline, as I mentioned to you. So I would like you to also share your point of view of that. But I have also maybe a sensitive question. Maybe you address it, maybe not. Yeah, associating your expat identity in the global south. I don't know, like being here, coming from the global south to the global north, I have a different perspective from some people, definitely not everyone. And you are the best example that it's not everyone. Yeah, moving for money, moving for a superior power or everything. But now you're being the expert European, moving to the southern lands. How are you sometimes challenged with the stigma of like the superior northern professional coming to our lands to fix everything?
Yeah, yeah, thank you for addressing. So before coming to the picture from locals to me, I was just wanted to add that one as well, that thinking about these infrastructure things, that on the one hand, it's adapting, but also maybe that is also my background in planning, where you feel like there is also always something to do, you know, like every day I come up with another idea of where I could do this and could do that, and maybe something else is needed. And I think that is also important, you know, to see, is there anything that I could give back? But at the same time, I think it should also not be something that dominates. And you also have to, you know, be a bit more relaxed, and in many cases say, yeah, this is just how things here are. We don't have here like 50 different bins. No, you put your bananas on the street. If they cannot eat them anymore, and the goats will eat them. So that's how the system is. But yeah, I do have, yeah, definitely experiences, and also some experiences that were challenging, where there is a perspective on me as a white person, be it in Ethiopia or be it in Egypt. It has something to do that, everybody thinks I have more money. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Or I should have a certain role here. Like, I mean, luckily Dahab has now become a place where a lot of people live. So I'm not like immediately, you can tell people like I'm not a tourist. And yeah, it's very difficult because, like, I would say I have the stronger experiences I do have in Ethiopia, because it's the kind of white people that are there usually do have a certain role. So I cannot blame anyone. And I think that's how I try to see, even if I don't have an experience that I really don't like, and I think it's wrong. Like, for example, I have been kind of, misused as a white person, being brought somewhere where I realized it's just for me to be there. Like, not for me as a person to be there, but for me to be as a white person to be there, like being on the picture that is shown then in press, like where I really felt misused. In the end, I always try to see that it is not about the person who is doing this. It's not about me. It's a bigger picture, and I know where it comes from, and I know that, yeah, there is colonialism in all sorts of life everywhere. It's intertwined with everything. Yeah, I think that's the way how I try to deal with it. And then there is a certain role and perception that is coming from some sort of how international relations play out. Yeah, I try not to take things personally. I think because I do have an understanding that there is something bigger behind. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Uta, because I hear every other opinion on it. Some of my friends in Germany, they say, no, I would rather not travel anymore because I don't want to be looked at like this. Or some say, no, I would rather not ever use my privilege to go somewhere else where I feel privileged because somebody else isn't. Or I refrain from using airplanes, which are because of the carbon footprint, which are all very valid arguments. But sometimes it also comes with a loss of missing the other perspective, or enriching your knowledge, or also like living something that it shouldn't be personal. It's again, as you've mentioned, which I totally respect and understand. It's a bigger picture that we cannot really control it, and we cannot really influence it all the time. And it's only the scale of our impact as human beings. What are we taking from this world to the other? And yeah, and thank you very much for also being here as a German, because I didn't want to only interview Arabs or like global southern coming to the north. And I also wanted to like share, I have friends in Germany who are they're very familiar with our countries, our cultures. So yeah, thank you for also giving some more real side to the German community. Not really representative, but just one sample. You're not the German community. You're just a friend of mine, let's say. So thank you also for that. And now moving to the most important question: this identity belongingness thing. How would you like to share on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I'm still interested myself in this question is, how did I become this kind of person? You know, I mean, I'm really not a psychologist, but it's also not really visible, because I grew up in a small German village with a lot of stability. Not really something where people could say, I don't know, it's obvious that you have been looking for a new home, or I don't know. And I still do. That's actually also interesting. I do feel very connected to my family. I do feel sense of belongingness, even in the space of the small village that I'm coming from in Germany. And I also do belong here. I think it depends very much on my emotional state, whether I feel extremely grateful that I am able to belong to many different people, many different social networks. You know, the network in my German, if you put these people in my German village now to my people here in Dahab, like it's really, really a clash. So I do feel grateful that, I don't know, I seem to be able to identify with very different people, also places. But as I just said, it depends very much on my emotional state, because I also have phases. I think you can hear that right now. I'm not in one of them, but I do have phases where I think, why you can't just be somewhere and you belong there and everything is kind of clear and you don't face all these kind of also difficulties that you have in this kind of binational relations that I have with many people. I think whenever I'm in the kind of challenge phase, it's mainly the why. I feel, why, what are you looking for? I think it's and it does have this feeling of being lost somewhere in between. And I think for me right now, the best way of moving out of this is moving into this gratefulness, like, and seeing that maybe it is not a contradiction. Maybe it's my personality, but also how the world became. That we can have different parts of ourselves that belong to different people that belong to different places. And I kind of want to see it as something that is enriching also the world. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing this with me on a personal level, because it helps me a lot knowing to have some company in this in-between place. And also for raising this very important question, like, why did you happen to become this person? Then when you started mentioning this, I started to flashback, where did it start on my side? And interestingly enough, I'm in Germany, which is not very unfamiliar or not a coincidence 100%, because the first 20 years of my life, I was not traveling abroad. I was bringing it mostly in Egypt. And then the first time I flew outside of Egypt, it was to my friends or family in the Gulf area in Qatar, in Doha. And then being a master representative of my master degree in Ain Shams, that was the first encounter with Germans, or like the European representative academic community in Egypt. After the revolution, we had this interesting workshop in 2011, and that was my first visit to an informal area in Cairo. And it was very interesting that the German lady called Giza, she's a lawyer, and she was the first one who took my hand to overcome my fears and walk into a neighborhood in my city, which I did not really trust myself because of the stigmas or because of everything, any reasons that I could not go into it alone as a lady, even though I am part of an academic group. And Giza, I don't remember her last name. She was part of the TU Berlin staff, and then she started explaining me something about the informal area, and then I got this curiosity about the Germans and the German community. And the next chance I got to travel with the student union to Berlin and visit the ASTA and visit the parliament in Germany. And going to Hamburg, I said, okay, I want to study abroad. And coincidentally, I had this master's degree where I got the scholarship, and that's how it developed. And then I started this obsession, let's say, or maybe this love or addiction for traveling, knowing more people. And it was like, okay, wow, a spark that opened, and I never have enough knowing more about the people, their personal life, everything. It comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of ups and downs. As you say, in some phases, I am really like down. Why am I not really the same girl who was raised in Egypt? I had this fixed community, fixed people, fixed support group, fixed family. Everything was constant, growing, but it's known. I totally belong there. But now I have so many places where I feel like I belong. One office I worked at, they were like, "You are a global citizen," but yeah, I belong to somehow to so many people and so many places, and it's very interesting how you put it in phases as well. I have one interesting question. I don't know if you would say something about it, and I will let you stay more with the sea, and that would maybe close our conversation. You are a woman coming from a northern global uh, hemisphere community. Now you're in the global south. How do you feel safe? How is your reflection about that?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the first thing is, interestingly, I do feel safe. I think again it has something to do, on the one hand, with the experience in traveling, so I know how to adapt. I mean, again, Dahab is very different than also Cairo, for example.
So back with
So
surviving with a technical problem that we had.
yeah, so that's I think that's the live version of how it always is. Either you don't have internet or your battery runs out. And it's also getting dark here, so I moved inside.
All
Yeah.
right.
So
Your
we
question.
we were just speaking about security, and maybe a woman's perspective. So yeah, I think there are again several layers to it. So the first one is that yeah, how to adapt, how to read a situation, I feel is very important. At the same time, not being, I don't know, over afraid. And so, I've been traveling on my own for already the past 15 years, often to countries where people used to say, like, this is not safe for women, you shouldn't go there, and all these kind of things. So I think one thing is that, I know, I know what to do where. Like in some places, I simply just don't go out at night, or I would try to go with someone. So the first thing is, again, asking. I mean, again, Dahab is not Cairo. I think in Cairo probably some things are very different. And then the next thing is also, touch wood, but in all these 15 years, nothing ever happened to me. I mean, maybe some stupid words, but really nothing that I was never in a situation where I was really, really afraid or something happened. And I think having some sort of a feeling, or having people that you can trust, I think also makes things much more much more easy. Which maybe, coming from a German background, is also not something that we're used to, because we're used to do everything on our own. I do everything on my own. And now here, for something, I'm like, it might be better to have even a man around. And seeing it as part of how it is, it's something that I think I had to adapt to. And then maybe not only about security, but more in general, of course, the perspective on women is a different one. And again, I most of the time I try to see it as different perspectives, and trying to learn that mine is not the universal one. On the one hand, things are always on the move, things change, but also not mine of, I don't know, a feminist white German is not a universal one. So I think, that is something that maybe interests me, and that is in the end maybe the reason why you can also sometimes deal with situations that you feel that this is now wrong, and why do you see me like that, and then stepping out of that situation and see that there are different perspectives, and why are they there, and I don't know, maybe that's the academic part in me.
Yes.
That can make situations becoming more easy, or at least stepping out of it from making things too personal and making things too universal. I think that is somehow how I see it.
Thank you for the sense of reality, and also always, like you have mentioned a couple of times, which I learn a lot and stress on it since I arrived in Germany. This comment always in the work environment: do not take it personally. Sometimes, in some places it's stereotyped, in some places it's misused, but in Germany I really appreciate it. And if somebody does not really understand it at the beginning, it could be really frustrating. But it somehow really comes with a very, very big advantage that you step out, zoom out. And I think that's coming from an academic background, but also I would assume, being an expat or like a translocal in Germany, that also, like, I have learned that slowly, try to zoom out, take things not personally, and see how it is in a sense of reality or a global place.
Yeah. And then I think also then it is, because only then it is also possible to start the conversation, because people here, as well as in any other place, when you start the conversation, you start to maybe gain another insight, and then it's where it might become interesting. sometimes not. Maybe you realize, okay, maybe we're just not able to communicate. But yeah, I think the stepping out is very important. And yeah, maybe that's what we learn being somewhere else.
I totally agree. I totally agree because it's a different culture, and really it's one tool that if you lose it, you cannot really be adapting or like coming in communication or starting even a conversation as like you mentioned now. Okay, curious question. How is
Yeah.
so far your relation or your look or your perspective to women of the community where you're living, either here or in Ethiopia? Like how you do you adjust your emotions or like your perspective? Because I have been in communities like in an oasis on the borders of Egypt to Libya, and this experience really changed my perspective about
Mm.
many social structures. Personally, you know the story. On a higher level, I realized how having a certain perspective or an emotional engagement with the locals and women specifically, and coming from a different city with a different structural norm before a lot, and before getting these advancement or development in my communication skills, that I can separate my emotional and zoom out and not have a certain way of looking at things. I don't know if my question is clear, but how do you feel it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least I understood something.
Okay.
So maybe what I and yeah, what yeah, so I think one thing that I don't know when I will be able to move to that one, but it's quite sad that I haven't really been able to go into depth with Bedouin women. So women here, they're like local women, Bedouin women, are not much part of the world that we are in. Apart from that, the few times that I was able, and I really would love to, I hope like learning the language will help. Yeah, I think it again shows that maybe a few years back I would have thought this is a very sad life. Like, you're home all day, you have many kids, you don't make any career. I don't know, all the things that for us are granted, and also yeah, something that is achievable, and now I see, I don't think everybody here is unhappy. So again, it's a matter of perspective. Like, this is part of the culture, and it's even the opposite, and that's the interesting part. Like, ask my neighbor Bedouin woman what she thinks about my life. She feels very sorry for me. She feels so sorry that I have to move all the time. I have to work so much. I don't have children. Like, for her, it's like, oh my God, yeah, come and sit with me, have some food, get some tea. Like, I guess your life is very difficult.
Oh,
So,
that's really interesting.
yeah. So, yeah. Again, a matter of perspective, and not trying to generalize to, I don't know, making anything universal. And maybe this is where then the difficult part of the value system comes back, like the positive but the difficult, like, because now sometimes I wonder, are the values that I have, are they really my values? Like, or are they the values of the society I grew up in? Of course, they also are. So, I mean, we will never answer this question, but who would I be if the values were only my values and not my cultural identity? And I think in these kind of examples, you really are confronted with this kind of question.
Yes. Yeah, these questions are really tricky for me as well. And yeah, thank you for bringing up because I had always at the beginning thought, okay, I'm really privileged. why are these women not having the rights to go to work? Why are they living in this bubble? Why are they not so much participating in the community? And I came also to the point you mentioned, like these are my needs and my in my idea, in my understanding, the things I need based on my culture, local culture, or the things I was raised up to see, the things that would bring me happiness, but maybe it doesn't fit them. Maybe they're happy, and not necessarily that when I imposed on them my culture coming from Cairo to this small oasis that they will be happy. And it was really interesting, and yeah, and I also had to develop this step by step, moving through different cultures through different stages. And I always ask the people this question, and I get very interesting answers. But would you, if you would go back, you started traveling, I don't know, like 15 years ago, maybe, I'm not really sure the number anymore. You asked why you became this person, and we didn't really find out. But yeah, we are all exploring. Would you have made the same decision going back then to start this the digital nomad travel person like this Bedouin lady told you, or would you rather stayed in Germany with less carbon footprint, not using your privilege, which we all acknowledge? I have been here struggling with the German foreign office affairs, or like the foreigners office, and I think also you struggle with these stuff like administration work is everywhere challenging. Would you rather stayed, or would you rather been in the no land zone where we all like as trans locals staying in now?
Yeah, I think I would. No, I'm sure I would. I would always say I could. I almost say I couldn't, which maybe is not true. Have a different life, but I would definitely. Yeah, I would definitely be again the one who is on the move. With knowing that, yeah, I'm the privileged one. I might be the better person for the world if I did some things different. But on a personal level, I think the growth and the joy I get from it, yeah, is much more worth, at least for me, than the stability and clearness, and maybe less of some really difficult struggles. But yeah, I prefer the growth actually. That's
Me too.
probably also how I see it.
Yeah, me too. I would have re-chosen my way of life that I'm in peace with it most of the time, I would say. Um, Thank you very much for giving me all the time from your tea time in Dahab. And maybe you would like to tell me, like, I invited you to take part in this thing that I'm doing at the moment. Well, and I was discussing this with my friend. She's an Iraqi, and then she was saying that she's taking the position. She's trying to find also her position in the world. And at the moment, she sees herself as witnessing the events back at home, witnessing the events in Germany, and somehow she's in between. And I don't position myself personally as an observant. Yeah, I'm not only observing, and what I'm trying to do also maybe is like to communicate or to mediate the two perspectives. I don't know what would that lead to. Honestly, I have no idea. But as I told you, I started it because of some reasons. Like I got questions from Egypt. People want to move to Germany, and they think yeah, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I try to say no. I try to give it a sense of reality, but I don't know if I'm biased. So maybe I created this. And also people from Germany who have a certain idea about back in Egypt. So I try to get it. I'm a lady, and I get several questions, and there are several reasons. I also belong to this community. I have so many reasons, but why did you maybe choose or decide to participate on that now? And do you think you are only observing? I think we are also like transferring some parts of us on the way. Hinon here.
Yeah, so definitely I don't see myself as an observant. I do see myself as participating. I think sometimes that's again when it becomes difficult, because you question in how many places can you be participating, like, you know, and also I don't have a clear future perspective. So I have like many different scenarios, being about people, being it about places. But yeah, I do see myself participating, and I want to be also. Maybe that's one point. And then the other thing, yeah, why did I choose to maybe share? I mean, thank you for the invitation. I think because there are many questions that I ask myself all the time. So I think it's interesting to go into a conversation. And then as I saw your post, I also thought it's maybe very interesting because I'm kind of doing it the other way around as your Egyptian friends. And I think it would actually be, I mean, now I have your perspective, but I think it would be actually very interesting to have, you know, a certain amount of people together discussing. And I think it even becomes more clear for me that, you know, it's not the same if you come back to Egypt than for me being in Egypt. And the same is true the other way around. Like, it's not being a person in German, but it is in Germany, but it is a person who comes from Egypt, who lives in Germany. And yeah, then on a global level, yeah, I really would sometimes, yeah, maybe not jump into the future, but it's also a bit fun to have these scenarios not only on a personal level, but to wonder, you know, what does this mean for the future? I mean, we can see some scary aspects of it. You know, people are afraid of, I don't know, losing cultural identity, or I don't know what. But then there is also another strong group of people, I guess that's more our side, who wonder, like, what does it mean when we all become global citizens with not losing culture, but, you know, what does it mean? And like, where will we move to? Yeah, when this question, where do you come from, is much more complex than where your parents have been born. You know?
Yeah, let's see. I think nobody is pure any nationality by that time. I think it's all like colorful, and I think that's beautiful. And I love also your colorful outfit today with your new hairstyle. It's beautiful, and thank you so much, Uta. Really, I cannot really thank you enough. And thank you also for sharing my confusion. I have no long time perspective where I'll be bringing my life. I don't know if you see yourself living in one country forever, be it Egypt, be it Ethiopia, be it Germany. I don't know. Like, it's the same for me, and I don't know. And let's see how the future will bring us. And thank you so much for your time. I don't know if I missed anything that's still on your heart to share, but I don't know.
No, thank you very much. I guess I'm very, very curious now to listen to the others. I think this is really what my next step will be. Yeah.
Okay, great. I will be sharing it everywhere and sending you the links.
Thank you so much.
Dahab, enjoy your country, Germany,
Thank you.
and send you lots of brezel and well, nice baked. You have a German bakery, by the way, in Dahab, but yeah.
Yeah, we do.
So until then, take care and see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uta.